Smash that subscribe button and join the family. I used to believe that success could protect you from cruelty. I thought that if I worked hard enough, dressed sharply enough, and smiled politely enough, the world would respect me. But I learned that in the glittering towers of Wall Street, respect wasn't given. It was purchased. My name is Amelia Carter, and for 6 years I worked as a senior analyst at Vance Capital, a prestigious investment firm led by the infamous Richard Vance, the kind of man whose name made junior traders straighten their ties and pray not to be noticed. Richard was brilliant, no doubt, but beneath that brilliance was arrogance so sharp it could cut glass. To him, the world was divided into winners and losers. Unfortunately, he decided early on that my husband Daniel belonged to the second category. Daniel isn't a Wall Street man. He's a craftsman, a designer of sustainable furniture, a dreamer with sawdust on his hands and poetry in his eyes. His workshop smells like cedar and peace. I fell in love with him because he reminded me that there's more to life than numbers on a screen. But to Richard, that made him a joke. It started small. Sarcastic comments in meetings, teasing smiles. "So, how's your husband's little woodworking hobby?" he'd ask in front of the team. I'd smile tightly, pretending it didn't sting. But the real wound came one evening at the Vance Capital Charity Gala. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and self-importance. Daniel stood beside me, shy but proud, dressed in his best suit, the one we bought after saving for months. He didn't belong there, and I knew it. But he came because he wanted to support me. Richard arrived late, his presence like a storm in silk. He walked straight to us, champagne glass in hand. "Ah, the famous husband," he said, his voice dripping with amusement. "Tell me, Daniel, how's business in the... What is it you do? Building birdhouses?" The laughter that followed was like knives. Daniel froze. His smile faltered. He tried to laugh it off, but I saw the pain flash in his eyes. I felt it burn in my chest. Humiliation, rage, helplessness. That night, Daniel said nothing. He kissed me on the forehead and went to the workshop. I lay awake, listening to the distant hum of his saw, and realized something inside me had broken. After that night, I couldn't look at Richard the same way. Every smirk, every condescending tone, it all felt personal. And maybe that's why I began to notice things I'd ignored before. Whispers in meetings, files that didn't add up, transactions buried under consulting fees. One evening, I stayed late to finish a report and stumbled across a restricted folder on our internal server, documents labeled Private Holdings. Inside were records of offshore accounts, shell companies, and false reporting to inflate client returns. It wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. The next morning, I asked Richard about a suspicious entry. He smiled. "Amelia, if you want to play with the big boys, you don't ask where the money comes from. You just make sure it keeps coming." I felt sick. At home, Daniel was quiet but observant. "You're carrying something heavy," he said one night as he sanded the edge of a table. "Whatever it is, don't let it change who you are." He always had that calm, the kind that disarmed my panic. His business, small as it was, had begun attracting attention from eco-conscious investors. Still, he never bragged. Meanwhile, Richard's jokes became crueler. One day in front of clients, he said, "Amelia's husband doesn't understand real work. He probably thinks ROI is a new kind of wood polish." The room laughed. Something snapped inside me. That evening, as I stared at my reflection in the office window overlooking Manhattan, I made a promise. "You humiliated the wrong people, Richard." From that day forward, I started documenting everything. Transaction trails, internal memos, encrypted messages. Quietly, carefully. I didn't tell anyone, not even Daniel, until months later when I had enough evidence to sink the company. When I finally told him, he didn't react with anger. He simply said, Do it clean, Amelia. Don't become like them. I smiled. Don't worry. I won't destroy him. I'll let him destroy himself. It took me almost a year. A year of pretending to admire Richard. A year of nodding through meetings, smiling through disgust. A year of listening to him brag about yachts and stock options while mocking everyone beneath him. Then, one morning, I walked into my office, opened a new email, and pressed send. The message went to 3 places. 3. Vance Capital's Board of Directors. Within 48 hours, the storm hit. Breaking news. Vance Capital under investigation for fraudulent reporting. I watched it unfold from my desk. Richard shouting into phones, lawyers pacing the hallways, employees whispering. The man who once mocked my husband now looked like a caged animal. 3 days later, I walked into his office with my resignation letter. He looked up, eyes bloodshot. You can't leave now. I need people I can trust. People you can control, you mean? I said softly, placing the letter on his desk. I'm done. He glared. You'll regret this. No one walks away from me and wins. I smiled, a calm, quiet smile that mirrored Daniel's. You already made your biggest mistake, Richard. You mocked the wrong man. 2 weeks later, the company collapsed. Richard was indicted for fraud, stripped of his position, and publicly disgraced. And the best part? The investment group that bought out Vance Capital's remaining assets was the Evergreen Consortium, the same company that had just signed a sustainability partnership with Daniel's firm. In his new office, Daniel looked at me across his handcrafted oak desk and said with a grin, Guess your boss was right. I do build empires, just wooden ones. Revenge felt satisfying, but only for a moment. What stayed was the quiet, the peace. We left New York soon after, buying a small house in Vermont surrounded by forests. Daniel built a workshop overlooking the hills, and I began consulting for ethical startups. No more suits, no more skyscrapers. One autumn morning, a letter arrived. The handwriting was shaky, unfamiliar. It was from Richard Vance. Amelia, I was wrong about everything. About money, power, and especially about you. You were the only honest person in a room full of liars. Tell your husband I envy him. Richard. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into a drawer. I didn't reply. Some ghosts don't deserve peace until you've found your own. That evening, Daniel and I planted a tree near the workshop, a young maple. As we watered it, he said, You didn't just end his career, you ended a cycle. I looked at him, the man once mocked by Wall Street's most powerful voice, and smiled. I didn't need to destroy him, I said. I just needed to show the world who he really was. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the light caught on the maple leaves, gold, fierce, and alive. And in that moment, I realized the truth. The best revenge isn't ruin, it's redemption. Epilogue. Years later, people still talk about the fall of Vance Capital, how one anonymous whistleblower brought down an empire. They'll never know that behind that quiet act was a husband who believed in love more than pride, and a wife who learned that power means nothing without purpose. And somewhere in Vermont, in a workshop that smells of cedar and hope, the hum of a saw continues, a gentle reminder that sometimes the most beautiful masterpieces are carved out of pain,